London, 1819. The bells of St. Haverford's Cathedral tolled like a heartbeat through the mist, each chime echoing the promise of forever. Inside, beneath vaulted ceilings and chandeliers that glowed like captured stars, the ceremony of the year was unfolding. The pews brimmed with the city's elite, powdered duchesses fanning themselves, lords whispering wagers, and gossip columnists scribbling history in the making. For today, Lady Amelia Ravenscroft, daughter of a fallen family, was to marry the Duke of Wycliffe, one of the wealthiest, most eligible men in England. Amelia stood at the entrance of the cathedral, her hands trembling around a bouquet of ivory roses. Her gown, a shimmering cascade of satin and lace, caught the candlelight like morning dew. Beneath her veil, her blue eyes darted nervously toward the altar where her groom awaited, tall, broad-shouldered, the very image of noble composure. Yet something about him seemed still, his jaw too tight, his hands clasped too rigidly. The Duke's reputation was of cold civility, but the letters he'd sent her before the wedding had painted a different man. Poetic, tender, yearning. It was those words that had made her fall, those letters that had promised love, not duty. The organ swelled. Her father, pale and trembling, offered his arm. "You are saving us all, my dear," he whispered, his voice heavy with guilt. "This marriage will restore everything." Amelia nodded, but her chest ached with something unnamed. As she walked down the aisle, the sea of faces blurred. Her gaze locked on the man at the altar, the Duke of Wycliffe, her future, her salvation. His eyes met hers, grey as winter steel, yet glimmering with an emotion she could not place. Sorrow, perhaps, or fear. The vows were spoken. His voice was deep, controlled, but it wavered on her name. When he lifted her veil, the world stilled. For a fleeting moment, she thought she saw pain flicker behind his composed smile. Then he kissed her hand, a gesture tender and deliberate, and the cathedral erupted in applause. The new Duchess of Wycliffe had been crowned by society, but as Amelia looked into his eyes, she felt a shadow slip between them. Something was amiss. Later that night, as rain lashed against the windows of the carriage bound for Wycliffe Manor, Amelia sat beside her new husband in uneasy silence. He stared out the window, jaw clenched. "You are quiet, Your Grace," she murmured. He turned to her, his expression softening for the first time. "Forgive me," he said, his voice lower now, rawer. "I am not yet accustomed to joy." His hand brushed hers. The warmth in his touch contradicted the coldness of his words. Amelia smiled faintly, convincing herself it was only nerves, only the strain of ceremony. She had no reason to suspect that the man beside her and the man who now bore her husband's title was not who he claimed to be. For beneath the silk and ceremony, the real Duke of Wycliffe lay bedridden miles away, hidden under an assumed name. And the man who had stood at the altar, and the one she now called husband, was his half-brother, Lord Tristan Hale, a man of passion and guilt, whose deception had been born not of malice, but of love and desperate duty. Wycliffe Manor loomed like a slumbering beast beneath a blanket of fog, its towers and stone gargoyles half consumed by the night. The new Duchess arrived to the fanfare of servants, but behind every curtsy and bow was curiosity, even fear. Amelia felt it instantly, that uneasy hush that followed her wherever she went, as if the very walls whispered secrets she was not yet meant to hear. Her husband, the Duke, led her through endless corridors, his candle casting soft, trembling shadows upon portraits of long-dead ancestors. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, and when they finally reached the grand drawing-room, she saw that one portrait larger than the rest, had been veiled in black silk. "Who is that?" she asked, pausing. He hesitated. "A reminder," he said quietly, "of someone who lost himself to ambition." His tone left no room for more questions. Yet that night, long after he had retired, Amelia found herself wandering back into that hall. She stood before the shrouded painting, fingertips brushing the edge of the black cloth. Beneath it she could see the faint outline of a man's face, proud, regal, familiar. A chill crept down her spine. She told herself it was foolish curiosity, nothing more, and hurried back to her chambers. Days turned into weeks. Life at Wycliffe was ordered and serene, yet threaded with something brittle. The Duke kept to his study for long hours, his door locked. He corresponded with no one, received no visitors, and dismissed questions with gentle, practiced evasion. Yet he was not unkind. In quiet moments, he would find her in the library, bringing her tea, asking about her reading, his grey eyes softening when she smiled. He listened, truly listened, when she spoke of her childhood or her mother's death. It confused her heart. He was not the cold, calculating nobleman society had warned her about. This man was warm beneath his restraint, patient, attentive, a contradiction wrapped in mystery. One evening a storm gathered over the moors, rattling the windows with fury. The Duke found her in the music room, seated at the pianoforte. Her fingers hesitated on the keys, playing a melody of longing and loss. He watched her for a long moment before speaking. "You play beautifully," he said softly. "It was my mother's song," she replied. "She used to say music speaks truth when words cannot." Something flickered in his gaze, a flicker of guilt, of recognition. "Then perhaps," he murmured, stepping closer, "it is time I listened more carefully." Their eyes met, and in that silence something shifted. The careful facade, the unspoken distance. His hand brushed hers on the piano keys, an accidental touch that lingered far too long. For a breath, she thought he might kiss her, but he stepped back sharply, as if burned. "I should not have," he began, but stopped. "You should not what?" she asked softly. He turned away, his voice breaking with restraint. "You deserve honesty, Amelia. One day, I promise it." She wanted to ask what he meant, but the moment dissolved as the lightning cracked across the sky. He left the room without another word, leaving her with the storm. That night she could not sleep. She rose, pulled on a shawl and wandered the halls until she found herself before his locked study. The door was slightly ajar. Candlelight flickered within. Against her better judgment, she stepped closer and froze. Inside, her husband sat at the desk, head bowed, hands trembling, as he read a letter written in a hand that matched the ones she had cherished before their marriage. Only this one began differently. "Brother, if you read this, then I am dead. Protect her name, protect the title, and forgive me." The ink was smudged, the seal broken. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "Brother," she whispered. Before she could retreat, the floor creaked. He turned sharply, eyes wide, candlelight glinting off them like steel. "Amelia," he breathed, his face ashen. "You weren't meant to see this." Her heart pounded, realization dawning like a cruel sunrise. The man she had married, the man she had trusted, was not the Duke of Wycliffe at all. The candle on the Duke's desk flickered wildly, as if it too recoiled from the truth. Amelia stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat, her reflection trembling in the glass of the rain-streaked window behind him. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm outside. "Brother, what does it mean?" He rose slowly, every movement deliberate, as though stepping toward his own execution. His face, once so composed, was stripped bare of pretense. "Emilia, I'm not the man you believe I am." Her fingers clutched the shawl around her shoulders, knuckles white. "Then who are you?" He took a breath, steady but heavy. "My name is Tristan Hale, half-brother to the Duke of Wycliffe." His voice cracked, the words cutting through the silence like a blade. "The man you were meant to marry. The Duke was gravely injured months ago in a carriage accident. He was not expected to live. Before he fell into fever, he begged me to protect his name, his estate, and you. He feared scandal, feared the vultures of society would devour the Wycliffe title if word spread that he was dying." Emilia stared at him, disbelief hollowing her chest. "So you lied to me. You stood before God and swore vows under another's name." He nodded, shame tightening his jaw. "I did. I thought it would be for a few weeks, until his death was confirmed, until I could find a way to release you without destroying your family. But then you smiled. You spoke to me as if I were a man worth knowing, not a ghost in his brother's shadow. And suddenly I could not let go." Tears burned in her eyes, anger and heartbreak colliding. "You had no right. You stole his life, my life." "I know," he said, voice breaking. "Every night I told myself to tell you. Every time you laughed, every time you looked at me with trust, I wanted to fall to my knees and beg your forgiveness, but I feared losing you more than I feared the truth." She stepped back, shaking her head. "You speak of love, but what is it built on but deceit? You took my choice. You made me a liar, too, without my knowing." He flinched as if struck. "You're right, I did. And I will bear that sin until my dying breath. But if there is one truth in all my lies, it is this: I love you. Not as a duke, not as a name, but as a man who found his soul the day you walked down that aisle." The storm outside roared as thunder shook the manor. Lightning illuminated the pain on his face, the tears glistening in her eyes. "If love were enough," she whispered bitterly, "we would not be standing in ruins." He took a step closer, desperation in every word. "Let me fix this, Emilia. The truth must come out, but I will take the blame alone. I will leave Wycliffe, disappear from England if I must. You will remain the Duchess. You will have your peace." She looked at him, the man who had lied, yet whose every word carried sincerity. Her heart warred with her mind, the memory of their laughter in the gardens, his kindness in the evenings, the way his voice softened when he said her name. All of it tangled with betrayal until she could no longer tell which hurt more. At last she spoke, her voice trembling but steady. "No, Tristan, I will not hide behind lies any longer. You taught me honesty, even through your deceit. The world will know the truth, and we will both face it." He shook his head. "If you tell them, they'll ruin you. You'll lose everything, your name, your standing." "Then let them," she said quietly. "Better to live with ruin than with falsehood." A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the rain. Then slowly she reached for his hand. "But for what it's worth," she whispered, tears shining in the candlelight, "I did love you too, before I knew who you were, and even now, when I wish I didn't." Tristan closed his eyes, her touch both a blessing and a curse. He turned his hand, pressing her palm to his lips. "Then that is enough to damn me," he murmured, "and to save me." Outside, the first light of dawn broke through the storm. Inside, truth hung between them, fragile, heavy, unbroken. The truth, once whispered in darkness, soon echoed through every hall of London's high society. Within days, the side scandal erupted. "The Duchess and the Impostor Duke," blared across gossip columns, carried from drawing rooms to carriages and supper tables. Invitations once extended to Emilia were quietly withdrawn. Acquaintances crossed the street to avoid her carriage. What had once been admiration turned swiftly to mockery, for no one forgives a woman who dares to choose love over propriety. At Wycliffe Manor, the storm outside had long since passed, but another raged within. The real Duke, pale, gaunt, but alive, returned under the escort of royal physicians. His arrival was a spectacle, his face drawn from fever, his pride stripped bare. When he saw Emilia waiting in the grand hall, her head bowed, his eyes softened with regret rather than anger. "You are not to blame," he said, his voice hoarse. "It is I who hid the truth. I made him my shield, and you his victim." Her heart twisted at his words. "He deceived me," she said quietly, "but he also protected what you could not." Behind them, soldiers stood ready. Lord Tristan Hale, dressed in plain black, his wrists bound by duty and chain, faced his brother with eyes that held no defiance, only sorrow. "I am ready," he said simply. "The name of Wycliffe will not be shamed further by my presence." The Duke studied him for a long moment, then turned to Emilia. "Does he deserve your forgiveness?" Her breath caught. She looked at Tristan, the man who had lied, but whose every act since had been to shield her from ruin. Her voice wavered, but her conviction did not. "He deserves it more than any title ever deserved you." The Duke said nothing. After a moment he turned to the guards. "Release him." A murmur rippled through the room. Tristan's chains fell with a clatter that seemed to echo across generations of pride. He looked at his brother in disbelief, but the Duke only said, "Go, before I lose the courage to do what is right." Tristan left that night, vanishing into the storm. Emilia watched him from the window as his horse disappeared down the long drive. For weeks after, she moved through the house like a ghost, no longer wife nor widow, no longer duchess nor bride. The scandal quieted, but her heart did not. Every echo of footsteps down the corridor made her turn, expecting him, praying she was not the only one left haunted by love that should never have been. Months passed. Winter melted into spring. The snowdrops bloomed along the chapel's edge, and with them Emilia found a fragile peace. She began managing the estate's affairs herself, ignoring the whispers of society, her strength a quiet rebellion against the cruelty that had nearly broken her. Then one morning, as she walked through the rose garden, a servant brought her a letter sealed with deep blue wax. Her breath caught. The seal was plain, the handwriting unfamiliar, yet the moment she touched it, she knew. With trembling hands, she broke it open. "Emilia, I have left England to live as the man I should have been all along. I do not seek your forgiveness, only that you remember I once tried to be worthy of your heart. Wherever I go, the truth of you will follow me, like the first dawn after storm." Tristan. Her tears fell freely, blurring the ink. For a long while she sat beneath the rose arbor, the letter clasped against her heart. The wind carried the faint scent of spring, and with it the memory of his voice, his touch, his love. She smiled through her tears, whispering into the quiet air, "You were worthy long before you ever believed it." Years later, in the countryside beyond Bath, a small chapel bell tolled one crisp morning. A simple wedding, no nobility, no grandeur. The groom, dressed in plain linen, stood waiting by the altar, his grey eyes alight not with fear, but peace. The bride entered quietly, her ivory gown soft as sunlight. No titles, no secrets, no lies, Only two hearts that had survived ruin to find truth. When she reached him, he took her hand and pressed it to his lips, just as he had that storm-filled night. "Tristan," she whispered. "Emilia," he said, his smile faint but sure. At last, no names to hide behind. As the chapel doors opened and doves took flight into the golden air, the world beyond them faded. For the first time their love was no longer forbidden, no longer bound by deceit. It was simple, it was real, and it was theirs. And so the woman who thought she had married a duke found something far greater. The man who loved her enough to lose everything for truth,